Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson. The ongoing lack of soybean sales to China has generated a lot of headlines. In fact, even President Trump tweeted about it last week. But what does it look like going forward? Joining me now to break it down is Jim Sutter. He's the CEO of the U.S. Soybean Export Council. And Jim, thanks for taking the time to talk with us.
Mike, it's my pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.
We haven't seen any soybean sales to China since May of this year. Jim, first question, are there any big news headlines coming? Is China stepping back into our market? Have you heard?
Well, what I can tell you is I was in China last week, had the opportunity to be in both Beijing and Shanghai, and met with numerous stakeholders we have there, long-term customers, partners in various ways. And I think they would all like to be buying U.S. soy. They certainly said that. They reaffirmed their desire to have the quality, the sustainability of U.S. soy. But there's a problem. We have this high-level sort of government situation going on, and until that gets settled, I don't think any purchase contracts will be signed.
All right.
I did see a Truth Social post yesterday that gives me hope that maybe in the next few weeks there will be something. So let's see. Fingers crossed.
All right. We'll see. We'll continue to watch that market. But in the meantime, trying to find more soybean demand elsewhere. Jim, that is the name of the game for USEC. Let's talk about what you're doing. You're in Taiwan and Japan on a USDA trade mission. Are you finding good demand for U.S. soy in those two countries?
We are. Both countries have been long-term customers of U.S. soy, important customers. So we have strong relationships there, but I would say they are stronger than ever. I started the week in Taiwan, Undersecretary Luke Lindbergh, leading an USDA ag trade mission there, doing a great job kind of representing the United States very well. And yes, we had the opportunity to meet with crushers, with importers for their food industry. And in all cases, they are buying U.S. soy. They're happy to have the partnership with U.S. soy. You know, in both cases, Japan and Taiwan, there have been the agreements, the framework agreements. They're anxious to see our governments get those put together. Here in Japan, I would say there's lots of optimism about the U.S. soy industry being able to supply them. And, China has been an exporter of soybean meal over the last few years to Japan. And now with China having higher priced beans because of the current situation, we think that could open up some meal opportunities for the United States as well coming here to Japan. So we're trying to open all doors we can, find all opportunities for U.S. soy to go to other markets while the China market is closed.
You know, Jim, as we look out to the future, we continue to see U.S. investment in soy crushing. We have the ability to split that bean into meal and oil here in this country more and more. And I'm wondering, we saw Argentina in the news for selling 40 cargoes of beans to China, whole beans. Does that create the opportunity for our meal and oil to move into those previous Argentina customers?
Mike, I think that is a great point, and I think that is exactly right, because Argentina normally exports mainly finished products because they have a tax structure that favors the exports of meal and oil. I think that we will have the opportunity, because we're having more meal. We need more openings, more homes for U.S. soybean meal. And I think with Argentina now having sold their beans to China, that'll give us the opportunity to ship meal to their previous customers. I doubt so much our oil, because our oil is already in strong demand in the United States for the renewable fuels industry. But I think certainly for meal, it's a great opportunity.
All right, Jim. Well, thank you so much for all the work you do on driving that soybean demand around the world. Is there anything American farmers should be doing in this crucial period right now to help push demand along internationally?
You know, I would say one thing that our farmers do so well, and I see it being talked about more and more in countries around the world, there's an interest in sustainability, in knowing how the U.S. crop is produced, knowing that we haven't hurt the environment as we do it, we haven't endangered people as we've done it, and our U.S. soy farmers are great. So just please keep doing what you're doing and give us the opportunity to continue marketing the sustainability of U.S. soy, as well as the quality and the reliability.
Jim Sutter, CEO of the U.S. Soybean Export Council, thanks for joining us this week.
Mike, thank you.
Our market discussion this week is brought to you by Farm Futures. Keep up with these volatile commodity markets at farmfutures.com. Joining us this week to dig into what's happening in the futures markets is Darren Newsom. He's the senior market advisor with Bar Chart. Darren, thanks for joining us this week.
I appreciate you having me on again, Mike.
You know, we just wrapped that conversation with U.S. Soybean Export Council. And Darren, it doesn't sound like there's a lot of opportunity coming on the China front. What are you watching in the soybean market here as we get close to harvest?
No, I agree with what Mr. Suter had to say. You know, I just don't see that the situation is going to change all that much. Now, that being said, I mean, if there's going to be a larger change than what's expected there, now it's going to have to come from the weather side. Mother Nature is going to have to deal a raw hand to South America, not just Brazil anymore. As we've seen, China's more than willing to do business with Argentina, who knows, Uruguay, anyone other than the United States at this point. But that being said, given the U.S. government shutdown, given the fact there's nothing being reported right now, and the fact that the National Soybean Index had posted its lowest monthly close since August 2020, I mean, it would make sense for the world's largest buyer to step in, maybe just to pick up a few secondary supplies here and there. No one's going to know about it as far as those who can only read markets by what they're told by USDA. So looks like at least a little bit of an opportunity.
So, Darren, we do not have export sales reports coming out as long as this government shutdown is in effect. So, for the market signals to see if China has made some purchases, what will you be watching?
The easiest thing to look at will be, say, the future spreads, because that's where we'll see the commercial side readjusting their position. So if all of a sudden we start to see NOV climbing against or NOV gaining against Jan in the March and so on, starting to take some of the carry out, then that tells us there's a bit of demand. And we can even look further out to say the March, May. Now, when we start doing that, though, that gets into the South American crop. So we're kind of limited on our windows. So really it's those first couple spreads. And then that'll give us a good indication of if China is buying some U.S. soybeans up until the time that Brazil starts bringing in their next crop.
Darren, you mentioned the carry. Looking from the November to the March, I believe we've got between 35 cents a carry here in the soybean market. How are you advising growers, or are you advising growers to capture that carry this year?
It's an interesting situation. I mean, we talk about it every year. If we use what the market is telling us, what should we hold, what should we sell? And theoretically, it would say, you know, if we've got short hedges on in soybeans, to roll them out to the Jan, to the March, whatever, and to try to capture some of that carry and then wait, hopefully, for basis to see some seasonal appreciation. Now, that being said, the reality is almost everyone sells soybeans at harvest and holds corn. So, I mean, it doesn't make any difference really what the market's telling us. That's probably the game that's going to be played. And you know, we've got some very weak basis levels around the country at this point. So, I mean, again, it just tells us that there's not a lot of demand. But if we can roll them out, and if we can take advantage of some basis appreciation, that might be the better play at this point.
Darren, are you hearing farmers start to scale back their soybean acreage intentions for next year yet?
It's possible, but I've also heard the opposite. I've also heard that that some are going to plant more soybeans next year, and that's another thing that we can be watching right now. It's not 100% accurate, but if we look at the 2026 NOV bean Dees corn future spread, right now, at least the first few weeks into September, and I usually track it from September through February, the first couple of weeks of September showed us that, corn was still looking to buy acres away, more corn acres versus soybeans.
All right, more to come. We'll have more with Darren Newsom of Bar Chart when we return. Our market segment this week is brought to you by Farm Futures. Keep up with these volatile commodity markets at farmfutures.com. Joining us to dive into these markets is Darren Newsom, Senior Advisor with Bar Chart. And Darren, we've seen this corn market really capitalizing on export sales. Now we've got a government shutdown. There are no export sales reports. Is this going to be bearish for corn futures?
No, because I mean, the numbers basically all they do is confirm what we already can see in the market. Again, we were discussing the spreads and the carry in the soybeans, but it's just not that strong in corn. And so we see that even though we know we planted more acres, we could tell that again by the spread last year, the Dees corn spread last year, and we know that production is good, and we've got plenty of supplies coming in because basis is still running relatively weak. But we also know by looking at the spreads, most notably if we go out to the May, July, we've still got we've got strong demand for the U.S. crop this year. So We can read what's going on. We don't need the numbers to back it. I mean, yes, it'll be nice if and when the government ever opens up again, but it's not a necessity. It's not something, traders have to know the actual government numbers because they're smart enough to understand by reading the market.
That makes sense, Darren. Any advice to growers right now as that corn harvest gets underway?
I think we can take some shots here when the corn rallies because we're going to see pops. We dropped these down to 410, rally it up to 430. So there's going to be some opportunities. If we've sold corn, then market volatility is still low. So I mean, there's an opportunity. I'm not a big one for reownership through options, but this could be a case because we could see a winter spring rally, similar. No, I'm not going to say exactly like what we saw last year, but similar to what we saw last year.
All right, Darren, let's turn our focus over to the protein markets. The livestock side, cattle in particular, certainly been fun to watch for the past couple of years. Here over this past month, though, it seems as if the live cattle market has stagnated. December between 230 and 240. What are traders watching for this time of year?
I think the biggest thing in the cattle is what's happening with the cash markets. And I'm not talking about boxed beef because those are USDA reported prices. And I think we can all say we've lost faith in that. But if we look at the actual cash markets, we see that they're starting to sag a little bit. And that's always been an indicator for livestock markets. So they've long been driven by cash. So we've got funds who have been riding this train higher, as you said, for the last couple of years. They could be starting to get a little bit nervous, possibly looking to roll some money over into other market sectors that are just getting ready to make a run based on fundamentals. Maybe cattle has just gotten a little long in the tooth here.
Any advice for folks who need to hedge some of that risk? Cattle feeders who have written some checks for expensive feeder cattle this past year.
I mean, if you can still make some money up at these levels, and I hope that you can, even looking out at the deferred contracts, I would say, get some hedges on if you can do some contracting. I know that's a little bit of a different issue in the cattle markets, but if you can get some on, do it because these markets do look a little top heavy, and we've seen this before. I've talked about this before. We do have to be careful because it doesn't take much to push these markets higher. But I do think they could start looking at getting some sales on the books.
All right. Better to sell when you can, not when you have to, is always strong advice.
Exactly.
Darren Newsom, Senior Market Advisor at barchart.com. Thanks, as always, for your insight on the commodity markets this week.
Thank you, Mike.
Agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead.
Well, ag meteorologist Greg Solier has been watching the developments around the country. And Greg, when you look out at the Pacific Northwest this next week, what do you expect to see?
Par for the course, troughiness, as we call the weather business this time of the year, did bring some degree of rainfall in spots last week. On the cooler side of the weather maps and charts, not unusual to get a frost patch into parts of the far southern Canadian prairie, the Dakotas, not unusual for the time of year there either. And so it goes. Nothing too headline-ish out across the Pacific Northwest, except for what's been going on much of the summertime season. Those topsoil moisture levels, boy, 95% short and very short. But we do get a little bending, some troughiness that strengthens up as it makes its move inland, and that should help to generate at least somewhat better coverage shower activity later on into the wheat, helping out those winter wheat fields as well. Somewhat modestly low snow levels, not unusual again for this point in October. On the flip side of this weather system, quick turnaround and some scattered showers, maybe a couple of thunderstorms too across parts of the Dakotas. Any of these cool air surges here are going to be relatively short-lived and basically coincidental with these systems as they make their way across either the Pacific or the Atlantic. And here's another one migrating offshore of northern Baja early into the week. So the tropics are active, or we're still winding our way through in some areas of the southwest. The monsoon setup, meanwhile, across the high plains areas, warm to hot weather is returning very quickly in the wake of a cool snap that will once again reestablish itself. And it's just really more normal temperatures, but not much going on in the organized moisture sense until perhaps the following weekend. The tropical rains, though, and flash flood potential might continue into parts of the desert southwest, far southern California, back to dry time seasonal weather across the northern valleys on northward.
Greg, this has been a very, very dry September. You've been predicting that for some time, and now it's verified. For the central part of the U.S., do you see that dryness, any relief coming next week?
Not really. Great for outdoor work and harvest. We do that juggling act every year of harvest versus getting moisture in the ground. We think as it gets deeper into autumn here that it'll be more of a milder to warmer to drier to milder to warmer to wetter before we get any strong cold air intrusions. Although, pretty snappy October cool front on the move across across the western Corn Belt. A smattering of showers to just barely settle the dust, if that. But the air behind this weather system is just more seasonal in nature. So we move out of this mid to late summertime feel into just that. A little frost patch over parts of Wisconsin and Minnesota, north of the Twins and Lambeau. Windy weather returns and a couple of showers too on the return flow of milder air across the northern and central plains later on into the week. Here's kind of the southern extension of some of the tropical weather in the Pacific, throwing moisture northward, flash flood potential desert southwest, parts of West Texas, and even some moisture too for the Rio Grande Valley. A couple of showers and thunderstorms as the cool front makes its way. A warm start to the week, a cooler, drier air mass for the end part of the week, and a little tropical wave may increase some of the shower activity down across coastal sections of Texas back into the Rio Grande, and again some downpours in the desert southwest. That monsoon season continues on there.
Any shot of drought relief for our friends in the Northeast next week?
Not at all, unless we can get one of these tropical systems in remnant fashion or bodily make its way through the western Atlantic and move onshore. Don't think it's going to be one of those years. We did have some moisture from Imelda make its way inland later on in the last week time frame, but otherwise it's a few spotty showers over the northern and eastern Corn Belt, inconsequential, but a more October feel and a rush of wind early in the week, and by later on into the week, frost patch up towards the Sioux. Cooler, drier weather eastern Corn Belt. Combines are rolling. A couple of spotty showers inconsequential into the northeast. Meanwhile, west of the Mississippi, opportunities for outdoor work are back into play with recovery on temperatures and lots of sunshine as well. Complex frontal boundaries that are kind of shearing off any tropical systems that move on in. And so you get rain, but that's it. No big name systems, despite what all the model Armageddon talk continues to be once in a while on social media. And some tropical downpours into the Carolinas down through Florida. We've eradicated the drought there. Showers and thunderstorms across the Gulf Coast, and another tropical wave that may work inland across parts of the Rio Grande Valley. Less humidity, a cooler, drier air. Still no sign of getting any organized rainfall across the Delta and Cotton Belt country on northward anytime soon. We'll have that extended outlook, the 4-week forecast, coming up a little bit later on in the broadcast.
Closed captioning this week is brought to you by Farm Progress. Their team of experts reports on innovative solutions and essential information for your farm business. Visit farmprogress.com to stay updated. Welcome back, everyone. For more than 40 years, U.S. consumers have been drinking less fluid milk, but they have been consuming more butter, cheese, and yogurt. And that combination of factors has led the dairy industry to offer a premium for butter fat. Dairy farmers responded, perhaps a little bit too well. This past week, the World Dairy Expo was going on up in Madison, Wisconsin, and we had the chance to talk with Corey Geiger. He serves as the lead economist for dairy with CoBank, and as you can see, he was on location up at the Dairy Expo. And Corey, thanks for joining us this week.
Pleasure to be with you.
Let's talk about this recent study you did on the changing levels of butterfat and protein in milk. Corey, if you could set the stage for us a little bit, what have we seen in U.S. dairy milk supply over the past 10 years with regard to butterfat and protein?
Mm-hmm. You know, from 1924 to about 10 years ago, if milk production went up, butterfat production and protein went up. But everything has changed. I tell people that the dairy cow is the most researched animal on planet Earth, and we, through genetics, through genomics, the study of DNA, and through feeding practices have really elevated butterfat levels in the United States. And in fact, in the recent months, June, July, and August, we're up 5% year over year. Protein's a little bit less than that, but completely new story in recent years to U.S. dairy. And it's important because 80% of the U.S. milk supply goes into manufactured products, as you shared in the open.
Absolutely. So if we've got milk products with higher butterfat and higher protein, shouldn't that help us make more milk products, Corey?
It does. And up until recently, it was almost in a perfect balance. But in my recent study, I looked at the top 3 global exporters in this order, the EU, New Zealand, and the United States. And in the past 10 years, we're actually up 13% in the United States for butterfat production. And the next closest is only at 6%. And protein, we're also leading growth in the world right now. And that's important because the U.S. is exporting between 18 to 20% of their milk supply in forms of dairy products. But the unfolding issue, half of our milk goes into cheese. And cheesemakers, especially American-style cheesemakers, need a ratio of 0.8 protein to butterfat. And right now that number has slipped below that ratio, and you've got to do one of two things at that point. You run a separator pulls out cream or butterfat, same word, or you got to add milk protein concentrate, the middle word being protein, and to fortify the cheese to make the right protein ratio. So those are the things evolving at the processing plant, because U.S. dairy farmers have gotten really good at making milk components, especially butterfat.
Given that we've got this, I'm going to call it a protein hole developing, the protein levels aren't rising quite as quickly as the butterfat. Corey, are we seeing the market start to respond with incentives to pay farmers to increase that protein percentage?
That is the discussion that we're hearing a lot in the countryside and in processing arenas, that people are, what they're talking about. Part of this could be, please don't send me any more butterfat. Another part would be send me more protein with incentives. I think we'll see a mix of both here unfolding in the dairy industry. For people who are following the spot butter market, we're down about 70 cents in the last 60 days. Again, butter product to sales are up 4.5% year over year. We already exported 250% more butter than we did last year. So we're moving butter, but we're just making a little too much of it. The one issue on the genetic front, though, is butterfat and protein are correlated traits. For the people that don't study genetics out there, if something's correlated, that means if you lift one up, you lift the other up. The correlation is 0.8. So even if we put more emphasis on protein, butterfat's going to increase at about 80% level. So there's a lot of moving parts to this story.
There certainly is. And I mean, we're starting to see this play out. Corey, how long has this been an issue for dairy processors here in the United States?
The protein or the fat ratio is really more of a recent story in the last 2 years. If you look at milk checks, I tell dairy producers and everybody in the industry, if butterfat and protein were NASCARs or Formula One race cars, from 2000 to 2014, protein won every race in the milk check. In the last 2 years, butterfat has won 8 of the 10 races. So we've been telling dairy farmers through incentives in their milk check, make more butterfat. The end of this year and moving into next year, I predict that we will be, that'll flip. Protein will become the lead in the milk check, and that will be one of the biggest incentives out there.
All right, Corey, is this high butterfat issue impacting our milk exports at all, or is it just an issue for manufacturers?
Well, it's a multifold issue. It certainly impacts manufacturers, but if we make more butterfat, we got to find a home for it, right? And that's either a U.S. consumer or an international consumer around the world. You know, a lot of people in the audience certainly know the issues with tariffs right now and trade. Dairy is quietly having one of its best years on record here. Part of that is because the EU is down 14%, the euro is down 14% compared to the US dollar. That's a major competitor of ours. And US dairy products, especially butterfat and butter, the product, and cheese, is about 80 cents to $1 under the euro and New Zealand prices. So those two things have helped move a lot of product as well.
Well, that's fantastic. Glad to hear dairy farmers are having a good year. They've earned it. Corey, if we've got folks who want to dig into your study in more detail, read all of your references, where would you send them for that information?
Yeah, the easiest place is to go to cobank.com. My teammate Abby Prins and I wrote that article, and we have that report on there as well as a number of reports, and we just did one last month predicting dairy replacements over the next 3 years, which that's a whole other story, the beef on dairy movement.
Absolutely. We could spend an hour on what has happened in the dairy market just over the past year, but we know you've got a lot going on at the World Dairy Expo this year. Corey Geiger, lead economist for dairy at CoBank, thank you so much for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.
Have fun up there at the World Dairy Expo, and folks, leave it here. We'll have more when we come back.
Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Pioneer. Plant with confidence. Plant the #1 corn and soybean seed of the U.S. Pioneer.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to This Week in Agribusiness. Farming is all about capitalizing on the available resources, and a lot of times that means partnering with the latest in technology, and that can come both on machines and in seeds. Joining me now is Scott Eversgerd. He's a Pioneer field agronomist out of Nashville, Illinois. And Scott, thanks for joining us this week.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Of course. I understand you've been talking with farmers a lot recently about Vorseed Enlist and PowerCore Enlist. Tell me, what are those bringing to the marketplace?
So those are our two newest traits, and really bringing growers the options of flexibility, yield, and protection. So we look at that yield component. These are going to be our latest, greatest genetics. These are genetics we're putting forward that are showing the best advantages agronomically as well, and then with the yield component as well. From a protection standpoint, these are the traits that are going to stay ahead of the bugs, so to speak. Obviously, corn rootworm has taught us in the last few years that they're a pretty smart little bug. So from a borer seed side, we got to stay ahead with the rootworm traits. On the corn borer side, with our Power Core products, haven't seen a lot of resistance on the corn borer side, but we know those bugs are always capable of developing that resistance. If we look at weeds, are always getting tougher to control, especially in southern Illinois and water hemp and palmer amaranth. We just need as many options as we can possibly get to control weeds, and the Power Core borer seed products give us that.
With that being the case, Scott, which farmers are the best suited to utilize the technology in either Vorseed or Power Core Enlist?
So as we look at Vorseed, we're really targeting those corn rootworm acres, where corn rootworm has been a problem. As we look at maybe more central Illinois, places like that, a lot of continuous corn, or the eastern variant where it's overwintering at the soybean side. You're definitely looking at Vorseed for those rootworm areas, and the traits that are in there, the proteins are really giving us our best option to keep the rootworms at bay. On the Power Core side, as we move south, we're looking at areas that don't need the rootworm protection, that maybe need more protection from corn borer, or even using Power Core Ultra, where we need some resistance for corn earworm, and using the Lepter trait there. So just a lot of growers, and it really fits a lot of acres in our part of the world in Illinois.
Well, let's talk about your part of the world. Combines are starting to roll. Do we have any Vorseed or Power Core data from this year?
Yeah, so our April corn down in this part of the state is coming off. Our April corn is actually pretty good, kind of what we expected. A lot of 200 plus bushel corn, some of our April stuff, and our Power Core Vorseed product performing very well. As I said earlier, they are our latest, greatest genetics, and what we're seeing out of them is exactly what we expect. We're just starting now to get into more of our May corn, so we expect to see those trends continue with those hybrids, with those traits. And here in a couple of weeks, we'll be well into harvest and get a really good look. But man, the early signs of and the products are doing exactly what we want them to do.
Products are doing what we wanted them to do. That's what you want to hear after those combines roll. Scott, if we've got viewers who want to learn more about Power Core Enlist or Vorseed Enlist, where would you send them for the information?
I'd send them to pioneer.com. I mean, there's a wealth of information there on the traits, the products, as well as local contacts you can get in touch with, from sales reps to employees as well. So pioneer.com is going to be a great resource.
Scott Eversgerd, Pioneer Field Agronomist, thanks so much for joining us this week and filling us in on the technology available for corn growers.
Thank you.
Agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier returns now with his extended farm weather forecast for the country.
Greg Solier is back, taking a look at what's to come in the next 4 weeks. And Greg, from a precipitation perspective, next week doesn't sound like much to offer, does it?
Well, we'll get stuff as the week wears on, nothing to greatly impact outdoor work and harvest, and generally a lot of dry days expected, but there'll be a movement and progression of weather systems. Of course, always driving that are the tropical scene, and here's one system here, another one more of a wave moving into the Gulf Coast areas and Big Bend of Texas, and a third system out here is probably going to swing to the north and northeast, but they do enhance rainfall, so that's the thinking down here. Another inch or two Gulf Coast, flash flood potential southwestern part of the country later on into the week. Not only one weak weather system early on, but put this one over here, and we may have a quarter to half inch and scattered to fair coverage expected as the week wears on. But sandwiched in between, Mike, lots of opportunity for the combines to continue to roll on an early and often harvest scene this year.
What are you watching from a temperature perspective as we get to October 13th?
These cool air masses, and really just more indicative of the month, really. They just are short-lived, a reminder of the season, and they're out. And here's another extension of warm, dry, high pressure. And you see this when the tropical basin in the Atlantic gets busy, so we're not done there. A little troughiness in the Pacific Northwest, and so it goes. Here's a system coming in out of the southwest Atlantic. Will probably make the curl to the north and northeast. Precip's about normal here. We'll pick up some some of this tropical moisture off the Pacific moving into the southwest, into the plain states. So some of those winter wheat fields will get some moisture. Welcome news for moisture too in the Pacific Northwest.
Any expansion of fall temperatures by the time we get to the week of October 20th?
It is short-lived on anything really requiring any layers or putting away the summer wardrobe. Here it is, much above, probably some 70s, probably some low 80s. And look at the warmth of the Ohio Valley. A little cool down here into the northeast of New England, and the moisture pattern is next to nil over the plains and Corn Belt locales. So once again, the combines are rolling. We may get a system that brushes across New England, another one approaching Florida, but again, coastal sections to the north and northeast, a little trough and some moisture too for the Pacific Northwest. That will be much needed and welcome too.
Final week of October, Halloween. We're going to be bundled up in our costumes?
Nothing too spooky. We'll put it at context here with the temperatures returning to normal up near the Canadian border. Still some lingering warmth for much of the Corn Belt on westward. Normal temps for the mid-Atlantic, a bit cool under the northeast of New England. And the precipitation pattern, again, you're going to be wrapped up pretty early here with harvest in mind across the Corn Belt. Worsening drought perhaps in some areas. Eastern states and southeast is wet, and the storm track continues pretty favorable in southern Canadian Prairie, the Pacific Northwest, probably a hint of snow across the higher elevations.
Our Farm Progress Update is sponsored by Brandt Industries. Lead the field with Brandt's lineup of versatile high-speed discs and achieve better results with every pass. Visit Brandt.ca for more. Joining us this week for the update is Mike Wilson. He serves as the Senior Executive Editor here at Farm Progress, and lately he's been putting the finishing touches on the Organic Grower Summit. Mike, thanks for joining us.
Great to be here, Mike. Thank you very much.
Fill us in on the Organic Grower Summit, OGS. What is it?
Organic Grower Summit. This is an event that I would urge everyone who's watching the show today to consider coming to. It's December 3rd and 4th in sunny Monterey, California. And this is an event that we began working with about 3 years ago. It was traditionally for specialty crop organic growers on the West Coast. But considering these days with the issues with our low prices in the commodity world with corn and soybeans, I think that everybody out there might consider a new opportunity, considering something different for 2026 as we start thinking about better ways or other ways to make more money. So the Organic Growers Summit is for bringing all industry folks together with growers to debate and discuss the key issues that are going on in the organic world. Many of these growers are very savvy. They've learned how to manage their production yield issues, and so they end up capturing those 10 to 30% premiums on top. So it's a dynamic world, and we are very excited to be working with a new advisory group. There's 11 person panel that we put together. These are industry experts around the organic field, and they have really helped us to figure out exactly what we need to be doing for the Organic Grower Summit this year.
All right, there's a lot there. There's sessions, there's a trade show, there's a way to meet and greet and get to know and network, I suppose, with other growers would be the word I'm looking for. Mike, if we've got viewers who want to come, they want more information about it, where would you send them?
Well, I would definitely open up your browser and go to organicgrowersummit.com and start checking it out. We have 12 sessions, educational sessions. We're going to be talking about the important aspects of organic and regenerative agriculture, how they work together, the USDA's role in strengthening organic enforcement to try to prevent fraudulent organic products coming into the country. We're talking about agronomic processes and practices like how to use beneficial insects. We've just got a load of great dynamic sessions, and these are both growers and experts who are going to be there to talk about these issues, but also to take questions and get your questions answered.
Thank you, Mike. We'll be back with more after this.
Now on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, where we spotlight another great American farm tractor. In the shed this weekend, it's an Oliver tractor with a special front end attachment that the owner says makes it a little more versatile. Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Lundell Plastics, with a wide array of products for your farm to make your operation a little more efficient, perhaps. Check out their product line at LundellPlastics.com. Agribusiness.com. Well, I met Jim Schmidt the other day in Altenburg, Missouri, and he was telling me that the Oliver 660 tractor that he had there in the parade was actually a New York tractor from back in the day. Take a look at it. You know, back then, the Oliver 660 was known as a good dairyman's tractor. Maybe it was when it was used there in New York. They said that tractor could handle haying, silage, light tillage, but it was compact enough for barnyard maneuvering. I've seen 660s still in their work clothes out on steel on Amish farms. Oh yeah, and check out the front end. Jim Schmidt says that allows him to connect a wagon tongue and to push it. Push the wagon instead of pulling it. An Oliver 660 made 66 years ago. Jim Schmidt owns it at Altenburg, Missouri, where we had the privilege of being in the East Perry County Fair just a few weeks ago on our Armstrong Farmo Super M that is now at home in Perry County, Missouri at the American Tractor Museum. Mark Stock is home right here every weekend with his Big Iron Report.
Well, hello, Max. As cattle come off the grass here throughout the Midwest, Big Iron sells feeder cattle, and we'll be having numerous feeder cattle auctions throughout the month of October and into November. If you're looking to fill up your yards with quality, reputation, rancher-owned cattle, please dial up the Big Iron website. Outstanding equipment will sell on October the 8th from CB Farms, Milton, Kansas. John Deere S770 four-wheel drive combine, 2023 John Deere 8R 370 mechanical front tractor, 2024 Peterbilt 389 semi-truck tractor, 2022 John Deere CS770 cotton stripper, and Plains New Holland Inc. from Hereford, Texas will sell a 2016 New Holland FR850 forage cruiser, four-wheel drive self-propelled forage harvester, and a New Holland rotary forage head. We will also be conducting a special ranch horse auction here October the 20th. If you've got a horse you would like to sell, please contact the Big Iron Livestock Division. Max, there are currently over 120 real estate, farm machinery, and livestock auctions scheduled between now and the end of the year on BigIron.com.
Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Geringoff. Check out the new XFR 50 Draper with 3 times more flexibility than the closest competitor at Geringoff.com. Geringoff, proudly built in the American heartland. Ivy Elwell joins us this week. She's serving as president of the Missouri State FFA this year. And Ivy, thanks for taking a moment to join us.
Yes, of course.
Tell me a little bit about your upbringing. Did you have your standard family farm background?
I actually did not come from a family farm or really an agriculture background. My sister, when she was little, she always wanted to show horses and ride horses. So one day my parents stopped into a barn outside of town and asked if we could take lessons. From then on, I've been involved in the agriculture industry, showing horses as well as other livestock with my sister.
There's a lot of paths forward in the industry of agriculture. Now, what advice would you have for FFA members curious about the program?
Advice to other FFA members I would have is to take hold of every opportunity FFA has to offer. There are so many opportunities, from going to National FFA Convention in Indianapolis to going to Washington Leadership Conference in Washington, D.C., and even getting to be a part of the National FFA Band and Chorus. There are so many different opportunities in FFA for FFA members, whether you come from an agriculture background or not. There's so many opportunities, and take hold of all of them, because you only get 4 guaranteed years in your FFA jacket. So take the time to take a hold of all of those opportunities.
That's a great point. Ivy, what are you most looking forward to in this upcoming year?
This year, I am looking forward to getting to meet FFA members from all across the state of Missouri. I'm currently doing chapter visits across central Missouri, and I'm really excited to get in classrooms and meet with students.
That is fantastic. We wish you safe travels as you get around to all of the chapters there across Missouri, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us this week.
Yes, thank you so much.
Harvest is the most dangerous time for American farms and ranches across the country, and our tech correspondent Chad Colby joins us now with an update of some common sense things that we all ought to implement each day on our operations, but especially during harvest.
National Farm Safety and Health Week just wrapped up, but the reminder is as important as ever. Fall's one of the busiest seasons on the farm, and with equipment on the move and long hours in the field and around the farm, staying alert and patient can make all the difference. Agriculture remains one of America's most dangerous jobs. Each year, about 200,000 work-related injuries happen on our farms, and 65% of those involve family members. In 2020 alone, 368 farmers and farm workers died from work-related injuries. Many of those accidents happen this time of year when the workdays are long and fatigue sets in. One of the biggest risks isn't just on the farm, it's on the road. Large ag equipment moves slow and takes up a lot of space. And especially at dawn and dusk, it's hard to see. Good lighting, reflective tape, and those slow-moving triangles certainly help, but drivers on the roads play a huge role as well. I recently talked with our local sheriff and was told the number one mistake that he sees drivers making is not giving farm equipment enough space and losing their patience. That's when close calls and accidents unfortunately happen. Watch for field entrances and driveways. Farm equipment may slow down or swing wide to turn in, and if you're behind one, back off, be patient. Only pass when it's safe and clear. Operators, take nothing for granted. Seat belts and rollover protection save lives. PTO guards prevent entanglements, and grain bends can always be deadly. Remember, never step into flowing grain. National Farm Safety and Health Week may be over, but the message carries on. Whatever your work looks like this fall, slow down, stay alert, and if you're on the roads, give farm equipment some space. A safe season means everyone on and off the farm gets home at night. You can find more safety tips and resources at the National Education Center for Agriculture Safety. That's necasag.org. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Thank you, Chad, for that update. And folks, that website, one more time, is necasag.org. Let's all stay safe this harvest season. Well, it's come up a few times already on this episode, so we figured it was time to dig in to the government shutdown. Uncle Sam closed down last week, and joining us now for an update is Josh Baitke. He serves as the policy editor here at Farm Progress. And Josh, is this shutdown going to end anytime soon?
Well, Mike, I think your guess is as good as mine. I can tell you so far we're not hearing any talk of any negotiations. Both sides seem really dug in. So this one may drag on for a bit, as far as I can tell.
All right. Well, I know that you and Farm Progress journalist Chris Six last week put together a breakdown as to how this government shutdown will impact agriculture. And let's dive into it. At the federal level, Josh, we've got the USDA. What happens with USDA staffers here in this shutdown?
Well, right now you have a little more than half of the USDA employees are going to currently be furloughed. So that means, agencies going to be working with, more than half its staff gone. So obviously, we know operations are going to be impacted. And then you also have the programs USDA runs that are funded through the budget process. Those are going to be on hold presumably until this is a budget issue is resolved. So, on the plus side, we know things like, crop insurance, recently announced emergency payments, those are going to continue. But things like, ARC, PLC payments, those might be delayed. Loan and grant applications, those are probably on hold until this is resolved. And honestly, we're still learning about exactly how this, shutdown plan is going to work at USDA. But farmers will almost definitely feel the impact of it.
Absolutely. And I know we are going to be not seeing USDA research reports. We haven't seen the export sales report, the World Agricultural Supply and Demand Estimates report, not scheduled to run during the shutdown. And Josh, now it's been several years since our last shutdown. Can we kind of use that one as a template for what to expect with this current shutdown?
Yeah, for right now, that's kind of the best we have. Unofficially, we've heard multiple people say that expect a similar shutdown plan as happened last time when we had the shutdown. I believe that was 2018, 2019, or 2019. But at the same time, we also have gotten word that the administration may be looking to make some of these job cuts permanent during the shutdown. Where those cuts will come from, we've heard maybe, conservation programs, some research programs may be at risk. Again, don't know this specifically, but that's kind of, what we're hearing in terms of how this may impact USDA, not only through the shutdown, but in the long term as well.
Now, as a side issue to all of this, before the shutdown happened, there was a lot of conversations about reviving a small farm bill to get some of those non-big, beautiful bill elements across the finish line. I've got to imagine that's on hold now, isn't it, Josh?
Yeah, that kind of got lost in the shuffle because, also expiring at the end of September was the last farm bill. As you know, it was extended through September 30th. A lot of the big provisions in there, commodity programs, nutrition, crop insurance, were addressed in the big beautiful bill, as you said. But the other things governed solely through the farm bill are now officially expired. So, funding, as it runs out, the government's not authorized to continue those programs. And I wouldn't expect any movement on the farm bill, obviously, until we get the budget issue resolved first.
Right. Got to go one step at a time. Well, of course, your story breaking down the impact of the shutdown can be found on the farmprogress.com homepage. Hopefully farmers can get on there and check it out. Josh Baitke, policy editor, thanks for joining us this week.
Yeah, always good to chat with you here, Mike.
And thank you for joining us. Be sure to catch us next time, right here for This Week in Agribusiness. This Week in Agribusiness is recorded in the Strauss Studios. For more than 70 years and 3 generations, Strauss has been manufacturing high-performance, German-engineered workwear, work boots, and safety equipment. Prepare for the next growing season at Strauss.com.
This Week in Agribusiness is produced by 22 Creative Group and has been a presentation of Farm Progress Broadcast. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.